Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy. This is Skeptic Generation, and we need to talk. Hey, everybody. It is a really, really fun episode that we've got today. Thank you so much for joining us. I know last week was kind of nuts, but we're well rested and ready to go, and I am not alone. Joining me today is Genetically Modified Skeptic. Drew, how's it going?
Hi, it's great to be here. I am super psyched that you're bringing the show back. And as soon as I learned that you were going to do this, I was like, I've got to get on and co-host. So thanks for having me here.
Dude, I'm so happy to have you here. I know that doing these kinds of shows isn't something you do very often. And like before we get into calls, I do have a couple of announcements, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So let me dive into a couple of these announcements. So first of all, we had some trouble with the phone number. While we were gone, somebody went in and stole tiny.cc/callsg for people to call in online. And now it leads to some weird crypto thing. And I've been trying to get it fixed. So check this out. Oh, people can call 412-SKEPGEN. That's 412-759-7436 to call us. And you can also go to tiny.cc/skepgen. That's tiny.cc/skepgen. If there are any problems, let us know in the comments. But when I tested it this morning, everything looked good, and I was really proud about that. So that is how people can get in touch with us and get on the show. So we've got that. Let's see. I know that you know things have been going on over here at home, V having their surgery and just kind of all of that. But how have you been? Like, what have you been up to?
So I want to just make you aware, chat is saying that someone's echoing. I don't know if it's me or you. You're sounding fine to me, and I'm listening to the chat. You're sounding fine. But as I talk, I'll let you figure that one out.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, God, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I have been completely immersed, submerged, whatever word you want to use, in scientific literature about trans healthcare and just kind of LGBT issues in general. I thought it was really funny that some people were doubting when I said, I've been reviewing hundreds of studies. It's like, oh, there's not hundreds of studies about this. There are dozens of studies that have come out this year already about this subject. It's a pretty big subject, and not every single one is like a randomized controlled trial of testosterone on a trans person. There are a lot of different things that this touches, and this research has been being done since. Depends on how you want to define it, but the oldest research I have reviewed starts in 1973, which is in no way even close to the beginning of the birth of this kind of literature. It's also happened in multiple different countries. I've read a lot of literature from Sweden, from Finland, as well as from the US and Canada. I also have been reading literature that was written in English, but by Chinese authors about the Chinese population. So it's a really big subject. You also can review dozens of studies at one time by reading one study, because that study is a systematic review or meta-analysis, which, as we know, reviews many, many studies itself. So it's not an exaggeration to say that there are hundreds of studies out there that are accessible. I'm talking about open access. I have not even had to sign into journals yet in order to read full articles. There are a couple of articles that I actually am probably going to reach out to our friend V to help me get access to. They have a couple connections, but
just a few.
Yeah, just a few. But I mean, I think the thing that's been bugging me for some time is that for a skeptic community, the people at the forefront who have the most subscribers, who have the biggest voice, do a pretty great job at looking at the science when it comes to evolution, which is a kind of extremely old debate, like hundreds of years old debate. And we do an absolutely abysmal job of talking about the science surrounding sexual orientation and gender identity. The science is on the progressive side, like just squarely, it just is. Like if you actually are scientifically literate on this subject, you realize that getting on a show and being like, yeah, let's talk about, sex and gender, and then going to just purely philosophical discussion with somebody who is spreading misinformation, like 80% of trans people desist from being trans at some point in their life.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
You might as well be getting on with, I don't know, Brett Weinstein and denying AIDS. Or you might as well be getting on with an anti-vaxxer, with like Andrew Wakefield, and being like, tell me about your revolutionary study.
Oh my God, you're going to get so many callers about this today.
Sure. I mean,
hope you are ready.
That's fine. I'm seeing people are saying that audio's fixed. So
it is.
Great work, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's what I've been doing. And I'm working on a response video right now that talks about this. I consider this to be the first of many projects to come that utilizes and rests upon the actual scientific literary consensus on this subject. So I will also share all my sources with the public as soon as I put that video out.
Nice. So I've got a couple questions for you. We've got a couple callers on the line, but it seems like you've kind of moved away from the angry, frustrated, stereotypical atheist content. You've been going into more nuanced stuff. How's that been? And like, I know your channel has exploded. Like, how have you seen the audience changing? And just
me going from being more frustrated and kind of using some mockery to me being a lot softer and kinder was like several years ago, and I definitely got a lot of hate for it at the time. And then my brand became the nice, friendly, jovial, compassionate atheist who still talks about philosophical discussion surrounding theism, basically philosophy of religion discussions. It actually wasn't until I started getting away from just philosophy of religion and started getting into the science and psychology of religion, as well as how religious ideas and the sociology of religion touches social justice, that I really started to get pushback, and I really started to slow down in growth. And I mean, having people on to discuss how the satanic panic in the US has really had a resurgence, and it's surrounding specifically trans issues, and the trans panic today being sociologically very much analogous to the satanic panic surrounding metal and D&D in the 80s. There are a lot of people who were telling me immediately, even though I was bringing on actual scholars to say these things, oh, you've given into woke ideology, and I like such and such way more than you now. And it's kind of like, well, this topic is a lot bigger than just the same discussion about philosophy of religion over and over and over until we die. We learn a lot more if we talk about diverse subjects. And instead of just arguing hypotheticals, we read empirical research. So that's where I'm at now. I'm being nice, but you can tell I'm a little feisty about the subject.
Well, I'm glad that you're utilizing the platform that you have to do the good that you want to see. I mean, I think that's really, really awesome. And I've kind of made a similar transition where I'll still see people from time to time saying, Eric, why don't you just get some guts, sack up and yell at the caller. And it's like, that's not me. That's not what I do. And developing that. And I don't know. I think it's really admirable. And you've been doing more than just that. I'm sure everyone who's in the chat knows who you are, but for people who don't, Drew also has done a really good job of kind of cataloging atheism for believers. Ways to talk to your family, different trends that happen in atheist communities, and addressing kind of common and really frustrating things that get brought up at dinner with family who just want to make it difficult. And I really appreciate the resources that you've provided like over the years. It's been incredible. So thank you for that, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. It is, like you said, it's me trying to be the change that I want to see. For decades, people have been talking about the Kalam cosmological argument and, teleological thinking and all of the classics, and that's useful to a certain extent, but really isn't, at the end of the day, aren't we watching philosophy of religion videos so that we can apply what we've learned in them to conversations with the people that we love, or hopefully at least the people that we love, maybe people who are just harassing us. But either way, ultimately, isn't the divide between, religious people and atheists more of a sociological problem than a philosophical one? Philosophy is a part of it.
Interesting.
But if we only look into that,
yeah,
then what are we going to do other than have the same conversation over and over? Maybe I want to have a different conversation, one where maybe we can actually disagree in the end about the philosophy of religion, but still not have the negative outcomes from the disagreement, from the difference. So yeah, cataloging those resources has been kind of a life mission for me.
I really appreciate that. That's awesome, dude. Well, obviously, I am going to be putting your channel in the description for the video and any resources that you want to provide because, of course. Anything else before we dive into calls? We've got a couple.
I don't think so. Someone just said that Drew is widely loved by atheists and skeptics in India, by the way, which I'm super hyped about. I actually was on an Indian channel with my friend, Science is Dope. And that was really awesome. There's a growing movement of scientific skepticism in India. And that's exciting to see.
I actually spoke to an Indian caller last week. I wish you would have been here to be a part of that. Dang. Okay. Maybe they'll call back. All right. So we actually have a Christian caller from South Korea, and I would love for us to talk to them. Drew, I did not give you enough time this morning to be able to access and see the calls on the screen. So for everybody watching, Drew is coming into this so blind. It is so not fair.
It's fine. We'll do our best.
We will. So our first caller is Isaiah from South Korea.
We actually have a Christian caller from South Korea.
Isaiah, we can hear ourselves. Can you mute the stream?
Drew, I did not give you
Isaiah.
I did not give you enough time this morning to be able to access
Isaiah
calls on the screen. So for everybody watching, Drew is coming in.
Isaiah, I'm going to pop you back into the queue. Looks like Isaiah's watching the show right now.
Yeah.
So Isaiah, we could hear ourselves. There was a lot of feedback there. If you can just turn down the volume or preferably mute the volume of the show that you're watching, we'd love to talk to you. But in the meantime, let's move on. And Tug called in last week. Tug is in Canada and actually has a really good question here. Or at least it's one that I enjoy. Tug is asking, what is morality and how do we figure out what's moral?
Oh, God.
Tug, you're live with Eric and Drew. Tug?
Sounds like all the callers have stepped out to go to the bathroom right when we pick up.
Apparently. I'm going to put Tug back in the queue. Let's see if we can talk to Ronan. Ronan, you are live on the show. Can you hear us? I know what's going on. I muted us to callers so that they couldn't hear us before the show, and they could not hear us. That was my bad. Ronan, you're live. How's it going?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi. I wasn't expecting this. I just want to say that I'm a big fan of both of you guys. You guys gave me a lot of good entertainment from your call-ins. Oh yeah, and then recently, Genetically Modified Skeptic's video. I watched every feature of the Atheist Culture Explained. That was a really good video. I just wanted to say that. Now, as for my question, I'm still sort of new to learning about sort of like a lot of like the intricacies of Christianity, and I wanted to talk about denominations because it's sort of like the way it's a sort of weird, like, I don't okay, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be totally like seeing this wrong, but I sort of see it as almost a hypocrisy of like Christianity, where like there's like, even though they follow like the same book and like the same morals of like the Bible, they still have like specific things that are specific to like there's different like sect or denomination. So I don't know. I just wanted to ask what that's all about.
Are you have you always been a non-believer, or have you personally come out of a religious denomination?
So I'm thankful to be raised non-religious.
Okay.
My parents were.
The question makes more sense.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. The question makes a little bit more sense. So as somebody who's a non-believer, you're wondering why there are so many different factions and religious denominations?
Yeah.
Okay. You called the right place. Drew, do you want to take this, or
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can have a crack at it. So why are there so many different denominations? Well, as a non-believer, don't you see that people who don't believe in a religion also disagree about a lot of different things? You know, I mean, God, sorry to even bring this up for you, Eric, but let's talk about like vaccine science and public health policy based on vaccine science. Even people who believe in vaccine science will will still disagree about the right public policy to have. And we saw, I'm bringing this up because everyone has borne witness to the massive disagreement that has happened among public health administrators and scientists, different politicians, even those who are informed. And then there are people who are not informed that disagree with each other and disagree with people who are better informed. You don't need religion to disagree. And within religion, you will disagree for a lot of the same reasons. You're operating on different facts. You have different assumptions about different things. Your emotions lead you to want to say a certain thing. The people that you're around tend to have certain assumptions, and groupthink sets in because you fall into tribalism with them. So why are there so many different denominations? I mean, because people are diverse in their thinking. That's how it works, regardless of whether you're religious or not. I'll let Eric kind of give his 2 cents on this too. And if I can formulate anything useful to say about memetics on top of this, then I'll jump back in.
Yeah. So I totally get it as a lifelong non-believer, not understanding how you could have the many differences. But have you tried reading the Bible?
I have not.
That's fine. I don't recommend it. It's not a great time.
I love reading the Bible. Like, I unironically love reading the Bible.
Well,
it's okay. I can be the weirdo here.
No, Drew, I've got my Bibles. It's not so much that, but somebody who's never read it before, it is not as fun as other, I think you can probably get through Genesis and Exodus and have a good time. But once you get into like Leviticus, it's not fun reading. You can skip forward to like, the conquest of Canaan, Numbers and Kings and that's pretty fun. But for them, like, as far as creation myths and the mythology of peoples, it's tedious.
I would say read Genesis, read Job, and read Mark. Luke is also pretty cool. Or Acts, but like, Yeah. Other than that, it's actually quite tedious.
Yeah.
Okay, you got me there.
I mean, yeah, Ronan, Drew and I grew up in a world where just to make the stories interesting, we would dress up and put on plays and things like that. And so, the story that gets me, that stuck with me, that I absolutely loved, was the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The three brothers who refused to pray before this statue of Nebuchadnezzar, right? And they were tossed into a fire, and they came out unscathed. And that I think to an outsider that probably doesn't sound awesome, but like there was a song, dude. Like, there was a song, and there were cartoons and animations and shit, and it was pretty badass. But like, all of those are interpretations, and because of that, you have to realize that when you have, old interpretations of, mythology like that, people are just going to split up. They're going to find the things that resonate with them and go, this is the most important thing. And they're going to split off from others who have things that they think are more important to them. And so that's kind of how you get the split. And then you get things like, Ronan, I don't know how much you know about like the history of the Protestant Reformation or anything like that. But you have, and I could go on for days, so I'm going to try not to, but like you have traditions that get built into these religious structures. And so you have something like the Catholic Church that got built. And then you have Martin Luther, who posts the 95 Theses on the door of the church in Wittenberg, saying, here are my problems with the Catholic Church. I'm going to create a schism. And boom, just completely split off and have this entire different thing. And then within the Catholic Church, you have splits, and they're just, a lot of them are doctrinal. A lot of them are about traditions that have been built up within the church. It's a clusterfuck. That's why on shows like this, I would say that our best bet is to listen to the caller and find out what they believe, meet them where they are, and then interact from there, because a lot of non-believers, especially lifelong non-believers, go, well, if you don't believe it literally, then you're a hypocrite, or why isn't all the? It's not the same, because it's all tied into these cultures that we grew up in. There's so many pieces to it that it really does matter to them. So I'm glad you're taking the time to ask instead of just thinking it's dumb, because if we don't have those nuanced conversations with them, we're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Drew, did you have anything that you wanted to add? I kind of just went on a tangent.
No, that was great. I was wondering if Ronan had anything else.
Yeah.
I do have another question.
Sure.
That popped in my head. So how did circumcision start? Like, how did that become a thing? Why is that a thing?
Well, I feel, Drew, have you done any research other than just what we know from the Bible? Because
repeat the question to me. I didn't catch it.
Ronan was asking where circumcision started. Like, how did that become a thing?
Oh God, yeah. I don't know so like I know and I understand. I've looked into the psychology of this, but I don't actually know about the history of where it originated. I do believe that there may have been some people who we wouldn't have considered to be Jewish today who did practice circumcision around in the Levant and Mesopotamia. We're talking like over 1,000 years, 2,000 years BC, a long time ago, properly long time ago. But, Judaism has evolved. There have been some Jewish sects a long time ago that probably did not do circumcision. And there were people, like I said, who were probably not Jewish who did do circumcision. Circumcision even today is not just a Jewish thing. So it's been predominantly Jewish for a long time, but you have to realize that things are so diverse that it's not just Jewish. That's about the best I can do when it comes to the history of it. That said, I will talk about the psychology of this a little bit. Anthropological research shows that communities and individuals who make costly sacrifices for their communities and for their beliefs, especially supernatural beliefs, tend to stick to them more strictly and tend to influence people to take on these supernatural beliefs and these beliefs that bind them together with the community who practices these things. So, yeah, cutting off a part of your genitals is a sacrifice for most people, and you can imagine that doing something that's so costly as that might feed into this psychological phenomenon and bind people together. So it's an interesting question. Where did it come from? I think it's an even more interesting question, why it stuck around. And I think that it stuck around because things like that, practices like that, make communities stick together, as strange as it sounds. Humans' minds work in really weird ways, even weirder than God's sometimes.
And just to tie in on the end of that, the mythological reason, the reason that's stated in the Bible, is that God told Abraham to do that as a covenant with God. So it was a sacrifice to show God that you really, really, really mean it. It was something that painful and that awful that, you really do believe if you can go through something like that. And continuing to do that was the way that in the Old Testament it's described as Jewish people, showing their covenant with God.
Huh.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
This was an interesting call.
Yeah.
Ronan,
if you don't mind, can I ask one more question?
one last thing, and then we've got like a dozen callers. So
Okay, that makes sense.
I know, right?
So I believe I've heard the claim from either this show or other adjacent call-in shows that a lot of the roots of the stories of the Bible, there's a lot of parallels between like ancient Greek or something like that.
Ancient Greek.
Or
probably
like,
ancient Mesopotamian. If you're talking about the Old Testament, you may have heard there's parallels between like the Genesis account and ancient Mesopotamian creation myths. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's probably what I was thinking of.
Got it.
All right, thank you very
Yeah,
much. You guys have a great show.
Hey, thank you for calling in.
Yeah.
Take care.
All right, you too.
Yeah. I don't want to overstate, what I know about this. I'm not exactly the right person to learn about this from. I would recommend that you check out the scholar Dan McClellan, who is very, very popular on TikTok and has a really great podcast that uploads on YouTube too. You can also check out Religion for Breakfast. That's a great YouTube channel. And Esoterica, who my friend Justin Sledge, who has a fantastic channel about the esoteric aspects of philosophy and religion, and they'll be able to educate you better than I can. But also Digital Hammurabi is a good channel for this. Probably the best channel for this, come to think of it. But yeah, so there was something called the Babylonian exile in Jewish history and myth, that basically the Jewish people were separated from, like, their communities were separated, and many of them were taken into kind of like a form of slavery or subservience in Babylon, in Mesopotamia, outside of the Levant. They were kind of second-class citizens in Babylon for a good while. I'm not exactly sure how long, but cultures probably meshed and melded. And some scholars like to say that, I think it's Justin Sledge that says that ancient Levantine polytheism went into Babylon and Judaism came out. So,
ooh, that's a good.
Yes. Yeah, there are definitely parallels between creation accounts that the ancient Mesopotamians had about the creation of the world. One of the biggest parallels is the creation of the world as an ordering event, where the original condition of the world was chaotic water. Water kind of represented chaos for the Mesopotamians at that time. And the first thing that happens in Genesis is that God is hovering over the surface of the waters, and it is formless and void, as I think the KJV says. So yeah, that's an interesting parallel. It's not all parallel. Don't listen to people who tell you it's just 100% a ripoff and there's nothing different. That's not true. But there are definitely interesting parallels there that, yeah, there is something to that for sure.
I love that. Thank you for that. I wish I hadn't cut him out. I'll make sure to put the links that you described in the comments for the clip that I put out for this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. Are you ready for the next caller?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Our next caller is calling from South Korea. We're going to try again. Isaiah, thank you so much. Isaiah, you're live with Eric and Drew.
So sorry about that, the technical problems. But first of all, I really enjoyed Drew's channel. I'm a Christian, but I find the content to be very informative and very engaging. And then also, I do want to say to Eric, I'm so sorry about the trolling that you had last week. That was so uncalled for. But
here's the thing, and Drew, I don't think you know about this. We had a drop in callers, and so I was like, crap, anybody. So the person who comes in next, Bree, who was call screening for us, didn't get the chance to call screen this person and would have screened them out immediately. But instead, I had somebody who hopped on and blew an air horn into the microphone.
Oh,
and just
God.
blasted the ears of the audience. Yeah, it was brutal. But appreciate that. And you know what? We're going to do our best. And I don't know. Okay, as a quick aside, I got to say, for a show that is doing its best to have engaging, meaningful, empathetic conversations with people, why troll this show? I don't know. But maybe it just means that we've got enough attention, so that's fine. Anyway, Isaiah, I want to read what you have here in the comments. It says that what can moderate Christians do to moderate extremists? How can moderate Christians avoid further alienating atheists even more? Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so a couple of things, because I'm a Christian, and although I don't vote, I would definitely be leaning left. Certainly not to like where the Democrat Party is, but definitely leaning to the left. And the thing is, what I've seen from the last 20 years since I've been like an adult is that the Christians are getting more like further to the right and more indoctrinated by like nationalism and specifically like an obsession, like a cult-like obsession with Donald Trump. And it frightens the living hell out of me. And I, as a Christian, cannot wrap my mind around how people could be so obsessed with someone who has such anti-Christian values and rhetoric. I can't even, it's like my family has just been like taken captive by it. So I can't really seem like I can reason with them on this topic. That's the first part of it. The other part of it is that kind of like how you got trolled, or how, and I wasn't even referring to the air horn. I was referring to the other guy who was talking about you and your partner. And I know your partner has received a lot of trolling online and misgendering and all that. So I know that's like very intentional stuff that maybe Christians do to try to trigger atheists. But like from your perspective, because I know what I think about this from my perspective, but from your perspective, what could we do to like make you guys less hostile? Because I understand a lot of you are pretty hostile to religion, so, and I get it.
So I have thoughts, but Drew, as the guest, do you have anything, or do you want me to go first?
You can go ahead and go first. I'll just say thanks for like being willing to have this discussion with people who it affects. That's actually a pretty huge deal. So yeah, Eric, go ahead.
No, that was the first thing. So Isaiah, I know that we've talked before the show stopped for a year, and you're a sweetheart. And I honestly, if more people were as empathetic and considerate as you, I don't think there'd be as many angry atheists. You know, I think part of what you can do is just consider the fact that a lot of us don't have homes that feel like we can be ourselves in. A lot of us don't have communities that we grew up in that still want anything to do with us.
Damn.
And and in the process of deconversion, just imagine still believing that there's a God, because a lot of us, when we're losing our faith, we still think that there's a God for a really long time, just maybe not the one in our church. But by the time that we go, well, maybe this isn't it, the people in our church already gave up on us. They already thought that we were gone, right? And so you find yourself excluded before even fully realizing you're an atheist. There's a pretty common experience that when you find that you want to talk to your loved ones about your leaving your faith, getting a lot of anger and a lot of, a Christian hopping online and Googling, what do I tell my atheist son or daughter or nephew, whatever, what do I tell this atheist so that they can come back to our faith? And what they get is a lot of vitriol and a lot of frustration. And so I think that one thing that a lot of atheists do when we do find ourselves kind of fully out of it is we're so anxious to defend ourselves after being attacked for so long that we arm ourselves with, well, here's the response to this, and here's the response to that, and here's the response to that, so that we can at least answer to the frustrating things that we've dealt, by loved ones and strangers alike. It's not true of everyone, but it is enough that it is definitely a stereotype that you have somebody coming up ready to fight because they've been fighting in their personal lives with the people that they should be trusting and the loved ones who should be supporting them the most, absolutely leaving them hanging out to dry. And so it's kind of no wonder. So a bit of empathy and a bit of understanding that they're going to get through this, but you don't start acting okay until you start feeling like things are going to be okay. And until you can find a community and people who care about you for you, it's really hard to expect that. So my first bit of advice to moderate Christians is make atheist friends and don't just go play Mario Kart, man. Go and do something that you enjoy together, help your community, and don't make it something that has to be, a doctrinal issue that they have to be behind you on, because, building those places is what's going to make atheists a lot less angry, I think. What do you...
By the way, I'm sorry, can I interject just one thing? And I really want to hear Drew, but two things. I totally get that. And through the podcast, I was able to interview a lot of different atheists, and I even got a chance to go to the UK and meet up with 3 of them in person. So one of them, I stayed at his house, and we exchanged Christmas gifts for each other's kids. It was quite an amazing experience. And then just one other thing, the last time I ever saw my mom, I told her I didn't believe in God, and she just refused to talk to me. And lo and behold, she just happened to die on my birthday 4 months later. But I totally get where you're coming from, because I wasn't a father back then. I'm a father now. And that's one of the things that really makes me second guess my Christianity and religion in general, because I can't think of anything that could break the bond of me and my daughter. And I don't care if she's a Satanist, that still wouldn't make me love her any less. And so that's one of the things that's causing me some cognitive dissonance since being a father. But Drew, please.
Yeah. So let me see. Oh, I'm hearing myself in your mic there, Eric. Okay, now it's gone. Appreciate that. When it comes to what a Christian can do to end this divide, I mean, I'm not sure if this is just a generic moral value, or if this is a super Christian moral value, but I was always taught as a Christian to lead by example, that what you do is always going to be much greater of a moral teacher than what you say. You can argue with family, you can argue with people until you're blue in the face, but if you are not actually showing your moral values through your behaviors, then you're not going to have the same impact. So honestly, making friends who are atheists and, not going to convert them or something, but just being friends with them and loving them. I mean, honestly, just being friends with atheists and loving them is like the best way for an atheist to become interested in like Christianity. It's like, oh, the Christians I know are nice. Like that's actually going to be the most convincing thing for most people, to be honest. So you don't actually have to try if you actually want to make converts, in my opinion. You just have to not be a dick. And
also,
but
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if your goal is to witness to them, I might advise you not be their friend.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Like, I think a lot of Christians assume that because they want to witness to atheists, that they need to be on guard, that atheists are going to be witnessing to them. And for atheists who are watching and wondering, what the hell is Eric talking about with witnessing? It mean, when I was a Christian, witnessing meant, and I'm sure it still does, but it's been years. Witnessing meant sharing your experience of God so that you can convert other people. And so
yeah.
The assumption that atheists are trying to witness to you, I guarantee you that's not happening. So, you not doing that in return would be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say, building community with other Christians who are willing to kind of take this same stance and see mending this divide as necessary, that's helpful too. I mean, if you have larger numbers of people who are Christian but willing to engage with atheists as human beings, not as like subjects, test subjects, pet projects, whatever you want to call it, yeah, the better we're going to be. So create interfaith communities, create communities with Christians who are willing to, try to empathize with atheists the best they possibly can, and be more concerned about showing love and kindness, and I'm assuming you believe that means godliness, than actually sharing a message of, what the gospel says. Atheists probably already know anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys for your feedback, and Eric, please send my regards to your.
We got Isaiah
partner.
on the line still? Yes, no?
I do. Can you hear
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can't hear him. No.
Oh, got it. Let me.
Can you hear me?
Hold on a second. I think I can fix that on my end. But I'll wrap things up here. Drew, you might get a bit of an echo from what you're hearing, but you'll be able to hear callers. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. All right. Take care, Isaiah. Thank you for calling in.
Okay.
That was nice. So Isaiah called in, from what I remember, before the show took its hiatus, and would call in about like different views, and it kind of felt to me like he was testing them out to kind of see if they were going to hold water.
Yeah.
But what I'm hearing from this last call is a lot of growth. I'm really happy to hear it, and I'm really like having these ongoing conversations and seeing that that development is really, really meaningful to me. So I'm happy to see it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen my own commenters. I've had commenters who were with me at a earlier stage in my channel and say this and that and the other to try to convert me or just insult me or whatever. And then as the years have gone on, and I've tried to mature and show that in my content, I've seen their comments reflect their own growth as well. And so it really helps me, it allows me to have empathy for them and where they were, because I know that if me from 2017 commented on 2024 GM Skeptic videos, I today would look at that and be like, oh, that's so cringe. Oh my God, why do you think that?
Right.
So of course, people.
And I've actually had people reach out years later and be like, could you remove that call from several years ago? But then I look at that call and there are comments years later of people that week who have been like, oh my God, this is exactly where I am, or this is exactly where I've been and this was helpful to me. You know, seeing those things reflected, especially the cringy stuff, can be so helpful. It can be so helpful. Do you know how many times I've put my foot in my mouth on this very show and just wanted to like take it down, but how am I going to show growth, you know? So
Right. Yeah, I keep up my older videos just so that people can see. I mean, they don't really get many views anymore, so I don't really see them as doing much harm, but like my really old videos I keep up there so that people can see like, hey, this is where I was in 2017, 2018. And now, you know, as I've grown up a bit, my views are different and are a lot more moderated in some places and are much more radical in others. So yeah, it's good for people to see growth.
it is. All right, let's move on to the next caller. I know that you were not looking forward to this one, but I want to Tug in Canada. You're live with Eric and Drew. How's it going, Tug?
Hi, I'm doing pretty good. I was wondering how you define morality and where you think it comes from.
Yeah, Drew, how do you define morality and where it comes from? There's quite a bit there. I can go first if you want.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. So let me just read the definition of morality to start out with. I think that's a good 101 essay way to fill some space here. So the first definition to come up is a particular system of values and principles of conduct, especially one held by a specified person or society. Where do I think morals come from? I think that it's a mix of nature and nurture. The nature comes in with the way that our brains have formed. We naturally can feel what other people are experiencing, not in a psychic way, but like visually and auditorially. We're really good at kind of keying in to other people and mirroring what they're doing and how they're feeling. And there have been studies that have shown mirror neurons in people's brains that actually activate in the same place. Somebody gets an injury to their arm, and a brain scan of somebody watching that, their brain will light up where that arm injury was. You can feel to a degree that kind of pain in other people. Problem is, it's most effective the more similar you see that other person, the more they look like you, or the more they're in your group. Right. But I think that creates a good foundation for that kind of kind behavior to others. We also see it in animals, this kind of social reciprocity. And it's the foundation for building a social society. So that's the underpinning to it, I believe. The nurture piece of it is, as we build this society up, it's not enough that we don't just, not kill each other. It's also that we respect each other's humanity. And that's something that we're continuously building. I don't think that morality is necessarily something that's set in stone, but something that we're constantly refining. That over generations, I'm seeing now us having a morality fight that was not even remotely being had 50 years ago. Right? 50 years ago, people were having riots over race in ways that, well, we're still having race riots, aren't we? It feels like we're making. It feels like things are hopefully getting. I don't know. How can I go back further? We don't have slaves in the United States the same way that we have. There's still a type of slavery, but I'm thinking out loud here.
A person, the average person on the street will say slavery is bad and that one race should not be subject to another. Most people will agree on that moral premise. Whether or not people are acting well on that moral premise is a completely different issue. But yes, there is some progress there. I agree with what you're trying to say there, Eric.
I appreciate that. But how do we figure out what is moral? There are so many different philosophies. I think that if the philosophy is over 300 years old, you should probably find one that's a little more updated. But I think that if you want to like get a primer in it, read Kant, Kant.
Yeah.
I think that is, I don't agree with a lot of things there, but it's a good start and it can give you a good place to ask questions and move forward.
When it comes to discussions of morality, Eric is constantly serving Kant, I would say.
Drew, we're already going to be so demonetized. You can you can cuss. I don't see any. I appreciate that. That was good. That was clever. So the problem that I have with Kant is Kant, believes that we have souls, and us having souls is the reason why we need to treat each other kindly. So obviously I'm not there, but this idea that we should act in a way that we want everyone else to behave, right? You kind of look at your action and go, would I want a world where everybody else does the thing I'm about to do? Would I want that world to exist? Is a cool start. And you can go on from there. But I think that's a pretty decent launch pad. I know I would want to go further, but like we have so many callers calling in. But did you have anything else, Drew or Chug?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So one would be, can you consider morality, like this is a question people should ask themselves. Do you consider morality to be able to be objective without it being based in something transcendent, extra to the universe? That's a huge question that you should ask yourself, because a lot of the time people say, well, where does morality come from? And you say something like Eric just said, and it's like a societal consensus type thing, and it also is based on our biology. And they'll go, well, that's how you're telling me like how to be moral, but like where is it actually based? What is the actual reason for blah blah blah? What's the actual grounding? And what they mean is they accept the premise. They're not actually directly saying this, they're just implying this because they think that everyone just believes the same thing for some reason. They believe, and they're stating that unless something is based in the transcendent, in the divine, in the supernatural, whatever you want to call it, it's not a real grounding. The next question you should ask yourself is something objective, like objective morality, or actually I should say, is morality that is useful inherently objective? Can a moral system that is not, transcendently or otherwise objective still be useful? That's another question. Is a moral system being useful, it being objective or transcendent? That's a question. And let me see. I know I had another question here. I think that people just get really hung up on the implicit premise that a moral system is not real and not useful unless it's grounded in the metaphysical. And people never explain why. They just kind of assume this. And then a lot of people who believe things like Eric and I do just allow that premise to slip on by and then have a discussion where we're never going to resolve it because we're not addressing their snuck premise. Yeah.
The idea that we need some, supernatural lawgiver, essentially, just to put point on that.
Right.
That is an incredible rabbit hole that I hope that you explore, Tug, because, oh my gosh, I have spent so long on it and I've found a lot of value there. And I hope you do too. I think my last statement to you on this is, don't let people approach you with the idea of morality that you need to create it from the ground up. We are not without moral behavior and are trying to build it. We are living in a somewhat moral world, where we and our neighbors already have a concept of morality. And because of that, it's not, could we be moral? It's not how to be moral. It's what, we're behaving in a moral way right now. What is it? And then, is it the
Yeah.
best that we want it to be? Can we do better? You know, but treat it as something that is currently happening, currently being iterated upon, and don't let anybody remove your ability to join the conversation because they think that you need to start from square one. We're all starting in a place where everybody is already behaving to a degree, you know, based on what they think their morals are. And so don't let them undercut you.
Really like that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Tug. I love these kinds of questions. I know Drew doesn't, but thank you. Thank you both. And I'll catch you later, Tug.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
That was a good one. Just I just got to make a joke that I liked, so that was a worthwhile call for me.
I appreciate it. I there are so many calls here that I'm not used to that have so much to do with the kind of stuff you talk about. I saw that one though, and I thought that would just be kind of fun. So let's dive into the next. We have somebody whose name is Phil-oginy. That's what they told the call screener. Phil-oginy. It says in the notes, the reliability of the Gospels and who wrote them. How much weight should we give to church tradition and other secondary sources? Phil, you're live with Eric and Drew.
Awesome. Well, you pretty much hit it right on the head. I'm curious because I find a lot of sources, including church scholarship or religious scholarship, that says that the Gospels are not actually written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And part of me is like, okay, I'm inclined to believe that. And that seems like confirmation bias because I'm an atheist. So then I go and I look at religious sources, and there's a lot on there that talks about like apostolic succession and how we know based on a chain of custody for people like Tertullian and Polycarp and Ignatius and all the things that they wrote that were a little bit more contemporary that seem to confirm whether or not these things were eyewitness. Now, I don't believe the things just because of the supernatural claims that are in them. Like there might be some truth in there as far as the names of places and people and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean that it's all true, right? So I'm just curious, if we step back from just looking at the narrative and we actually look at that chain of custody throughout history, where do these discrepancies come from, and why does the church get to be like, oh no, church tradition says it's this and everybody believes that it's true? Does that make sense?
It's a good question. And God, I feel like I can so strongly sympathize with where you're at on it right now, which I'm sure I've discussed this with both Eric and V. You're at like the peak, which is the bottom of the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's like you were really ignorant on it, and so you had a certain amount of confidence, and you knew a few facts, and you had high confidence, and the more and more and more and more you learned, your confidence just went down and down and down and down. And now you're down here, way more educated than most people. And you're like, I'm not sure. Like, I think I know, but I could be wrong. And I want to second guess myself. I don't want to give in to confirmation bias.
Right.
It's a bit of a paradox. But if you've gotten to the point where you are really worried about your confirmation bias kicking in after you've consumed sources on both sides, like ad nauseum,
okay, I wouldn't call it
probably you're probably informing yourself well enough to be confident at this point.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that you would agree that when it comes to the apostolic succession thing, there are many different branches of Christian tradition that all claim apostolic succession. You know, which apostle, which church father was the one that was right? I'm sure that you realize that, Tertullian did not agree completely with Polycarp, and who didn't agree completely with Ignatius, who didn't completely agree with any of the 12 apostles. We don't even know who all of them were, who also didn't agree with, Origen. It's
right.
Like I said earlier, there's a human problem. We disagree on things. There's inherently diversity. And I think that these chain of apostolic succession arguments really only work if we can discern whose subjective opinion is the objective one. And I don't think that we can really decide what the objective answer is based on interpretation of scriptures and things like that. Maybe if we had archaeological evidence of this person had the first scroll that was written about this. And the scroll was written by somebody who was an eyewitness. And then this scroll was passed down, this chain through several years. And there's actual archaeological, physical evidence that some authoritative source was in possession of only this sect. But we just don't have that. So we have to interpret the text for ourselves and just decide who's right based on interpretation. There's not a lot of certainty there. And it sounds like you perfectly well understand that at this point. Give yourself some credit.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, because it sounds like if one of the things that tripped me up. Okay, the Marcionites. Are you familiar with that sect?
Yes. Yeah, I've done a whole video on Marcion. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Marcionites have the oldest gospel in the world, and aren't they also Unitarians? Like they compiled it first into a thing, and so they can claim to be the oldest. Have the oldest canon, if you will. Even older than I think the Nicene, the stuff that was decided on during the Council of Nicaea and stuff like that. But like, then why aren't they the most popular? It's like it was all just power and politics that caused Christianity to go the way it went. So then how can that possibly be true? I don't know. There's just a lot going on there. Sorry.
Yeah, no, there is a lot going on there. I will say, so it is a misconception that the Council of Nicaea decided on anything related to the canon. That's like probably the most popular misconception about New Testament history or study. So I don't blame you for voicing that. The Council of Nicaea decided on a few things, but one of them was whether or not the church was going to affirm Arianism, like basically this idea that God and God the Father and God the Son were like two separate beings and one was subordinate to the other. And eventually they decided that Jesus was equal to God and Jesus was fully man and fully God. And in a way that's kind of the Trinity. I don't know that they actually use that term, but think of the Council of Nicaea, the first Council of Nicaea, as having more to do with the nature of God and Jesus, not so much the canon. But yes, you're exactly right that there are the Marcionites did have the first canon in Christian history as far as we can tell. And why does that not give them, authority to rule over the rest? Well, I mean, even the Catholic Church today and the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Ethiopian Orthodox churches don't go based on just the idea that they have the right canon. They also are like, hey, we have apostolic succession. We have these traditions that we're taught that don't have anything to do with having a canon or not. And I think that honestly, you just said it best when you said, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's really complicated. That's honestly just the correct view to have. It's just not simpler than that.
Okay. One final question then. Can you point me in the direction of when and where the canon was decided on? Because I knew that the Council of Nicaea did the Arian, took care of the Arian heresy, but I'm curious. I guess I kind of also thought that that's where they started to decide on biblical canon. Was the canon decided before that or after that?
So the canon was decided on. This is I think the reason why this misconception is so common, because the answer cannot fit even in a single sentence. The canon was decided on over actually hundreds of years. You could argue more than 1,000 years. There were bishops people like Irenaeus, people like Tertullian, people like Origen, people hundreds of years after them, not just in the first few Christian centuries, who were arguing over what books were authoritative and which ones weren't, and what authoritative even means. There were a lot of people that were arguing about the canon and what books we should use, that were arguing about that subject before the idea that the Bible or any of the books were divinely inspired was introduced in the first place.
Oh, wow.
So ideas of what should be canon before most people took on the idea of divine inspiration of these texts in the first place, wasn't even the same conversation. It wasn't which books are inspired by God. It was which ones do we like the most and we want to use and might be the most historically accurate and match my personal theology and biases the most, and which ones are the most misogynistic or which ones are the least misogynistic, which ones create the best society, which ones create the worst society. It's so incredibly complicated that you can't fit the answer to this in a bullet point, right? I will say, I might be wrong. Do Google this. Look this up after I say this to see whether or not I'm getting the name right. I believe it was Athanasius of Alexandria, who was at the Council of Nicaea, but was very young at the time, who first sent a letter to, it was either another council or to another bishop, or I think he might have just circulated this letter publicly, which did dictate that he believed that the church should use this set of books, and that canon list of his was very, very, very similar to the roughly 26 books of the New Testament that we have today. The thing is that after that letter was circulated, yes, that idea did gain popularity, but it took a really long time for people to decide that that's the canon. And I think you could argue that because there are different Bibles and different traditions, we still haven't decided what the canon is. So that's the real answer.
That's a nice application of logic. All right. I think you guys, thank you guys for the conversation, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Not every day that I get to geek out on that one.
Drew, you killed that. That was amazing. And the entire time you're talking, there's a Catholic caller waiting on the line who had a totally different question. And I am just like, ooh, I want to see how this plays out. But yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. Let's move on, see if we can hammer out a couple more callers. We have a religious caller. His name's Andrew. He's in Florida. Andrew, you're live with Eric and Drew. How are you doing?
Greetings, gentlemen. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. So before we dive into your question, you just listened to an entire conversation about canon and about the Catholic Church, to which you belong. Is there anything that you want to talk about with that before we get into your question?
Sure. Yeah, just coincidence. No, I agree with him historically speaking. A lot of the claims to the canon are theological claims. So on purely historical basis, I don't disagree with anything Drew said.
Cool. Okay. So then I'll dive right into your question. It says here in the comments, why does atheism promote cohabitation? And it sounds like you're not a fan of cohabitation. Talk to us about it. What's going on?
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know what the connection is like. Okay, we realize, okay, we don't have any evidence for God. Therefore, now most atheists believe that cohabitation is a better option than waiting until marriage. I don't know I don't see the connection, but I do see a lot of atheists or secular people with that view. I would just like to quote two studies to show why it's a negative thing. Statement 1, cohabitating couples have higher odds of divorce than married couples, even after controlling for factors such as age, education, income, and race, according to a secular study by Brown and colleagues in the Journal of Marriage and Family. So do we have time for me to state the second statement, or are we going to stick with that one?
Well, I'd love to respond to that first and then let you get to the second one.
Sure.
So people who aren't married, who are cohabitating together, and then they split up, I think that's a good thing. Personally. I think that if you are living with somebody, you're getting the chance to find out what kind of person they are. If you're going on a date, you don't necessarily know that person has no idea how to wash their own laundry and their parents have been doing it. You have no idea if that person is a slob or is casually just terrible in a whole lot of different ways. There are so many things that happen when you live with somebody that if you get the chance to live with them and find out that, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work, then the whole point, I think, there is you have the chance to get out while you can. I don't imagine that the idea of people splitting up because they've gotten the chance to drive the car before buying it is a bad thing. I think that that is a effect of that working the way I would hope it would. Drew, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think that we have to challenge the implicit assumption that divorce is inherently a bad thing in all cases. I'm sure that, I know that the Catholic Church has pretty strong taboos and doctrine against divorce, but I'm sure that you would agree that there are certain cases where divorce is probably actually best for both people. You probably think that it might be fewer cases than I think, but fine. I think that we would still agree on this. Operating on that premise, then, can't we see that if we're not making, divorce completely synonymous with a negative outcome, not assuming that it's negative, we could see in that study that, yeah, and I believe you. I think that the data, I've read that before. I think that study is accurate, but it's pretty understandable that people that do not have a taboo against splitting up would split up more often than people who do have a taboo against it. But because we know that divorce is not inherently a negative thing, sometimes people are escaping abuse, sometimes people are escaping something like cheating, or people are escaping a situation which just makes both of them worse people or less happy. That's not a bad thing. So yeah, I mean, Catholics probably do less cohabitation and less divorce, but I would also venture to guess that Catholics would be less likely to divorce when divorce might actually be a good thing to do.
Okay. So a question then, why does it happen after the marriage? If the point of cohabitation is to see if you're compatible and then get married, why more divorce if you're waiting, if you're cohabitating first to see if you're compatible? Why doesn't the breakup happen before the marriage? Because that was what people always told me. Oh, how can you marry someone if you've never lived with them? But if you live with them first, you're most likely going to get a divorce.
Interesting. Well, I've got a couple of guesses that I would love to see kind of borne out in studies, but I think there are two big pieces there. One of them is the sample set. I think if you have somebody who has waited to live with the person that they want to marry until they marry them, I think they're probably more likely to have taken on a religious ideology that looks down on divorce. And so I think that there might be some skewing of the sample set there. And then,
I would agree. That's a huge factor.
And then second, I think that I personally know and have known people who've stayed in horribly abusive relationships, but stayed with the person that they were with because religiously they were not able to get out, right? They were not able to leave that person they were with. I think that if you do that, if you cohabitate with somebody and test that out and then find out it's not working for you, maybe you might be just a little more comfortable with going, hey, Andrew?
Yeah.
There's some banging in the background and you have I have ADHD. If there's a way that if you're doing dishes or something, could you hold off until after we're done?
Yeah, for sure.
Appreciate it. So yeah, the other thing is if you can go, oh, hey, I don't need to stay with somebody, especially if it's not working, then maybe that is a more accessible option. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But did you want to talk about the other study, or did you want to talk kind of more on the specifics of why it's bad to cohabitate?
Yeah, we can do the other.
Yeah,
we can do that other study.
It's your call. You should have the opportunity to guide. What's next?
Sure. Thanks. It says cohabitating couples report lower levels of relationship satisfaction, commitment, and trust than married couples, according to a study by Rhodes and colleagues. Rhodes G.K. Stanley, a replication of extension and previous findings. Oh, Journal of Family Psychology.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that again, it's a sampling issue there, and I mean, not an issue. It doesn't mean that the study's not valid or something, but yeah, I mean, people who cohabitate, let's say, people who live together in order to kind of like try it out, may not be in the same place within their relationship as people who are married necessarily. I think that people who choose to get married, it's pretty understandable that regardless of whether they've done this for religious reasons or not, if they're making some sort of long-standing commitment to each other, like lifelong commitment, that kind of behavior probably selects for relationships that are a little bit more confident. So it would make sense that, yeah, people who decide to get married are people who have, when they are cohabitating beforehand, a more confident, more stable relationship. So that's how I would typically see it. It's not an effect of cohabitation, and it's not an effect of marriage either. It's just that what we're seeing in the married sample there are people who, when cohabitating, or maybe not cohabitating beforehand, were more confident in their relationship, had better relationship prospects in the first place, so they chose to get married.
I'm not sure. What do you think, Andrew?
I just, if I see, I'm just trying to make the connection. Like, okay, atheism, okay, I believe there's no evidence for God, therefore now cohabitation is a more positive outcome. Or like, if we see all these studies with negative attributes of cohabitation, then isn't it just better to just say cohabitation is not better? Like, what's the connection with that and atheism or secularism?
Sure. So, as a Catholic, I think that you would probably agree that there's a whole lot more than just the God question that's taught to you in church, right?
Of course.
It permeates so many different parts of your lives, including your politics in a lot of ways. As a believer, I was told that marriage was something between one man and one woman, and it was being taught in the face of a lot of anti-gay sentiment, right? My concept of marriage and what I thought made a good or bad marriage, I think, was something that after I'd left my religion no longer held a lot of weight, because all of a sudden the reason I was basing my opinions on things, because God said it or because I heard it in church, and that, is part of what the community that I was in espoused, that wasn't there anymore. And so I did have the chance to question it. And there are a lot of atheists and a lot of non-believers who will leave their church but never question the things that they learned in church that aren't just the God thing, like what you're talking about, right? When it comes to cohabitation even. I think that you're going to find that a lot of secular people and non-believers are going to vary in their views, but it does appear to make a lot more sense in the long run for people to get a good idea of what they're signing up for before they sign up for it, especially if they're going to, strive to keep that,
Yeah. I would say that ultimately what I'm seeing here, and thanks to V in the chat for kind of pointing this out, I think with the reading of the studies and, believing that you're basically seeing that cohabitation causes negative outcomes and that marriage causes positive outcomes, and also that atheism causes cohabitation. I'm not so sure that there's a causal relationship there so much as a correlational relationship there. And if you find research that says that there is a causal relationship there, that, marriage is actually just the ceremony of marriage makes things better and cohabitation makes things worse, there's an actual causal relationship, I would love to see that. That would be very interesting. And I think would probably make your point better than the evidence that you have here. But I wouldn't say that it's so much, atheism promoting living together rather than getting married or before getting married. I think that what you're seeing is the Catholic Church and Christian church generally promotes marriage as the exclusive option of human, like, romantic or sexual relationships, when the vast majority of cultures throughout time, philosophical and religious ideas throughout time have not done that, have not done the same thing. So it's not that atheism is saying we need to live together before getting married. You know, like I am married and I prefer it, and it doesn't have anything to do with my atheism. That's how it is. I just think that it's honestly more of a human default to not go through a very ultra specific religious ritual in order to bond yourself together with another person. There's not a relationship with atheism and cohabitation. You're just seeing a contrast to the relationship between marriage and Catholicism, I think.
Okay. All right.
I was not expecting this degree of communication. I thought this might get more heated. Andrew, was there anything else?
I know the heated calls are more exciting, but
so this is what I am trying to make this channel about. Like, this is what I want to see. So please, no, this is fantastic.
Andrew, you did a good job, like presenting the studies, you know, giving us the reference, stating, you know, what it said. I think you did great. I've actually seen those studies before, which is one of the reasons I don't doubt those. That you did a good job, and I appreciate that. And you also seem to understand, you know, what we're saying, and you want to talk about this again, then yeah, I'd love to.
I will take that as a chance to maybe invite Drew back another time. And Andrew, you're definitely welcome to call again. I have so many other like little nitpicky questions about, you know, what motivations are behind, you know, wanting to see a move away from cohabitation and that kind of thing. And I know that we don't have time for it today, but I would love to get the chance to explore that again in a future call.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, have an awesome rest of your day.
Take care, gentlemen. Have a good one.
You too.
Wasn't that just the absolute antithesis of Colin show tropes? Right?
That is
like.
Go ahead.
When you get two atheists on live, you know, trying to flex for the audience, and then you have a Catholic guy call in using insider lingo that atheists can find irritating, and then citing studies to back up his point, like. That's a recipe for disaster, or actually for very entertaining but not actually productive conversation. And I think that was good. I am very proud of Andrew and of us right now.
Right. I would gladly take the lower sub count and the lower views to have those more meaningful, more nuanced conversations, because I feel like these are the small steps that we take toward building a community together that doesn't always have to believe the same things. So
yeah,
cheers to that. Okay, I'm so sorry. I was so involved in that. I didn't get to read through all of these. I do have one here that I think would be really fun. It is Brian in California. Let's go ahead and talk to Brian. Brian, you're live with Eric and Drew.
Hey, thank you. I'm a fan of Drew. Eric, I think I might have watched one of your videos before, though I don't quite remember. I saw Drew's post about it, and I was like, oh, I'd like to call in. I haven't done that since I was 17.
Yay! That's awesome. And no worries, Brian. I'm just some asshole on the internet, so you're good. So it says in the description for your call, you want to talk about neo-atheism and post-new atheists and branding. Talk to us. What's going on?
Yeah, well, so it doesn't like have to be called neo-atheism. It could be called second wave atheism. But I feel like I've noticed that like there are a lot of atheists nowadays that want to disassociate from that kind of new atheist form that came about post 9/11.
Yeah.
Guys like Drew who are more like about understanding religion and the benefits of it, and and also getting away from like anti-theism. And so, like I said, I feel like we should try to find some kind of label to like, so that people start knowing like, okay, we're not like the new atheists, we're like something else, something different. And I just said neo-atheist because I've also noticed a trend online that like, if you can't say new, the next thing to say is neo. But I'm not trying to invent language here. I'm just saying I think we need some kind of new label.
Totally understood.
Does that make sense? Or am I crazy?
Oh yeah. I feel that. I get that. And man, so something that I have realized with my career in doing this, I didn't, first of all, expect to get the viewership that I have now, or even that I had by the end of 2018. 100,000 subscribers was my biggest goal in my entire life when I started doing this, and I went full time and reached that in like 5 months. And so I've just been like riding the wave, trying to do my best, like realizing that I'm getting a lot more I have more influence than I ever really prepared myself to have. And so because of that, I try to make it really slow going. I've been doing this a while. I know how to get more views. I know how to get more subscribers. I know how to grow aggressively. I know how to form community around me. I know how to get the audience to defend me no matter what I say. That's something that you learn as you become like an influencer and community leader and whatever else you want to call it. And a lot of that time, that power is not actually good to exercise. There are people that get involved in controversy and they have such a relationship with their fans that their fans defend them when they've done things that they need to apologize for or need to just get off the internet after they did. And so for me, I say all that to say that I've realized that my channel is big enough to start a new label, to come up with a new term for this. I talk about calling myself a pluralist. I talk against the label anti-theist in my content, like you said, but I have really shied away from coming up with a new label because I, in the end, don't want this community to revolve around me. I don't want it to revolve around my content and my channel. I want to be one voice, and people can point to that and be like, that I resonated with that for this and this reason. I do not want people to point to me and go, that's the guy that we need to follow, because inevitably I'm going to lead you astray somewhere. Like that's it. That's just how it works. I'm not going to be able to be this great grand leader. And the vast majority of people who fancy themselves an incredible new thought leader are actually people with quite low empathy who enjoy power and are also charismatic. They're not people who actually need to be in leadership. So I would say, I'm assuming you're a guy, you're a regular guy. You have about as much influence as anybody else who's in like a forum. You are the kind of person where labels need to come from. You are the kind of person that need to start conversations about the language we need to be using. If it comes from me, that label is going to be about me, and it doesn't need to be about me. It needs to be about what you just said. So having these conversations with other people and coming to consensus based on that, based on a lot of debate, like the New Testament canon formed, that's the best way to do it, I think.
And then, well, Brian, do you want to get the chance to respond before I hop in?
Yeah, and I guess what you're saying, it does make sense. I will say that as someone who studied communications for PR and advertising, it's like what you're telling me is also like really like I get from your standpoint, Drew, and I think that is very responsible of you. But it's like it's so much harder for like people like myself to have that influence and stuff like that. But I think what you're saying is very well thought out.
And Brian, are you aware that it has been tried and had really, really disastrous failures in the past?
I generally tend to think if I come up with an idea, it's probably already been come up with somebody smarter.
No. Trust me, not smarter. So just for fun looking up, the first thing that I would say is Daniel Dennett wanted to rebrand atheism, and he called it the Bright Movement. And so if you are a non-believer and you've kind of come to this place of not just, the God question, but I've moved into kind of a liberal view of things, you are a bright. How cringy is that? It was bad. Because what's the alternative? If you're not a bright, you're dim.
Yeah.
Right. It's just horribly cringy and got really, really did not do well. And then later on, I think it was like the early 2010s, I heard about Atheism Plus.
Yeah.
Like a subscription model. I mean, you know, oh, the Atheism Plus movement. And the fact is that from what I've seen historically, when it comes to non-believing communities, you know, and we organize ourselves into communities because we're humans. But it's like wrangling cats.
Yeah.
You just are herding cats. It's so difficult to find and label that kind of thing because you have a whole bunch of people who fought really, really hard to get out from under a label in the first place. That there are a lot of people who will find it kind of morally superior to get out from under that label just so that they could say that they did.
Yeah.
But if you go ahead.
I was going to say, I would say the problem with Bright and what was the other one, the Atheism Plus that you said, is, and this is once again just kind of coming from my background and my studies, that just sounds like it's terrible because it's not actually using things that are familiar to people, or in the case of Atheism Plus, it's using a context that people are just like, they already associate it with something else, like you said, like a subscription model. So that's why I called it neo-atheism. I was trying to think, like, what do people already know? How are people already speaking?
Yeah.
And how do I combine words that people are already using in a way that, like, they're going to hear them together and it's going to make sense?
I would say neo would be a bad prefix there because, like, neoconservative and neoliberal tend to be ascribed pejoratively to them as a way to describe them as a radical. But if you want to see some cool conversations, instead of looking for the word atheist, look for deconstruction. There are some incredible communities that are being built online around deconstruction that are both believers and non-believers, people who are really, really intent on getting into the nuts and bolts of what they believe and why, and breaking down those pieces and finding out whether or not those pieces are worth believing. And I've seen that it is less vitriolic and more interesting to see those conversations being had. So maybe looking there would help.
Yeah. I'd say for me, the problem with, like, I get what you're saying too. I don't know. For me, the thing with deconstruction is that it feels like something, like, obviously I'm aware I can deconstruct my own beliefs and my own background, but I don't come from a religious background. So I hear deconstruction so often associated with Christianity. It doesn't feel like there's a place for me because I was never a Christian.
Hey, I mean, I definitely feel that it is that in a lot of ways. That said, you will find people that I think that you would get along with. I mean, if you're the type who would want to have a conversation with Eric and I, you know, you're probably the type who would want to have a conversation with someone in a deconstruction space. But I don't know. What do you think, Eric? Is there room for people who were never religious in the deconstruction sphere? Do they have something useful to contribute, and can they identify under that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. From an epistemic point of view, I mean, the tools that you're using to deconstruct your religious beliefs are tools that should be in your toolbox. And if you've never had that religious belief, you should still have those tools because it's going to help you break down everything else in that world around you. So I feel like if you wanted to get involved in that space, you can really develop those tools, that epistemic groundwork to take elsewhere. So even if you're not there, and plus, I mean, not just in atheism spaces, not just in deconstructive spaces, but just you're going to find people in both who just want to have wonderful navel-gazy conversations, around morality and ethics and how did we get to where we are and where should we go? So Yeah, no, I highly encourage you to get involved in those communities simply to develop the skill set. Yeah.
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 I'll try looking more into that. I have tried, although I've always kind of failed. I don't seem to know why. Maybe it's because I'm using Reddit as a medium, but I've tried like inviting people onto a small podcast that I have, and always seem to fail. I don't know if it's my approach. Like last time I tried approaching it, like I wanted to talk to a young Earth creationist, and everyone just seemed offended, even though I thought I was being polite by saying I've got like an anthropological interest in young Earth creationism and want to talk to one.
Yeah. So this is where I think you get a lot of people who want to replicate the things that they see on TV. There are a lot of atheists who watch call-in shows like this that are really, really aggressive and really, really shouty and really vitriolic. And they go, oh man, that'd be fun. And so when they get the opportunity, they want to replicate that. And so finding those, it can be really tough having those conversations because of what happened there. Don't give up. I think that over time, if you keep doing your podcast, you're going to create a community that's going to be the kind of community that you want. But it is going to take that time and work for sure.
All right. I'll keep at that.
Yeah. And keep doing it. You seem like a sweet guy. I think you should absolutely create that content, build that place and form that community. Just keep doing it. You know, don't be discouraged. Keep going for it. Okay.
All right, thanks. Yeah, my co-host and I, he's a Catholic. We certainly do try to have like more like, you know, just casual conversations about these weird topics like aliens and supernaturalism.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You ever talk about cohabitation?
we had another podcast where we talked about we were so much more off the wall. We talked about stuff like that. Yeah.
Right on. I hope to hear in the future that you're continuing to do it. That's awesome.
All right.
Hey, Brian, thank you for calling in.
Thanks.
That was a GM Skeptic viewer. I'm glad that was somebody who called in. Have you talked to them before?
No, I don't believe so. It is interesting to hear someone talking who like has a PR and marketing background, because they almost definitely see what I do in a way that's a lot, in a way that most viewers don't, I guess I should say. A lot of people don't, they're very blind to marketing. And that's very scary because marketing is, it's easy to pull one over on people. And so, talking to a person who's aware of that kind of thing, and I can say, yeah, I don't want to actually do marketing in this way. And they're like, oh yeah, I understand that. I understand why. That's nice and refreshing. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, me too. I having moved into the corporate world for a while, and seeing marketing from the corporate side, it has blown my mind. I've done it now for about 2 years, and I just resigned from my position in marketing because I can't. It's so different from what we do, Drew.
Yeah,
it's so different. But
agreed.
I have a couple more callers, and I know that I only have you for so long. So if you've got to go, just let me know.
Sure. Let's
scoot right along and talk to John in Texas. John, you're live with Eric and Drew.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for waiting. I know you've been on the line for a while. It says it says in the description that you want to talk about the idea that people need to have faith in something. Is that about right?
Right. Well, it's just that I know a lot of people who like to say, well, it's good to have faith in something. You got to have like a higher power. I've been an atheist since August, and I guess I'll admit I am one of those aggressive atheists. that you were talking about, but I guess it's just because I'm so angry from being indoctrinated into Christianity and subscribing to dogmas for so long that I guess I just have been attacking a lot of Christians recently, mostly in the comments section on videos on atheist channels. But I run into this a lot. It's like, okay, maybe God doesn't exist, but why don't you just let me believe? And it's like, well, because I don't like what Christianity has to offer. I don't like what it says in the Bible. In fact, I really liked it whenever you tore up that Bible and said, well, now the Bible is a whole lot better than what it was before.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm just, I guess it's just that there's just so many people that I've talked to that just keep saying, well, you got to have faith in something. And then I remember at one point I was going to therapy for alcohol, and the first thing they would talk about really was, well, you got to find your higher power. You got to have faith in something so that you don't get back into drinking. And I'm just like, why do we need a higher power? Why do we need to have faith in something? Yeah. And I don't know, I guess I just wanted your opinion on that. Like if somebody told you, hey, just let me have my faith, what would you have to say about that?
I have thoughts. Drew, can I take this one first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if somebody says, just let me have my faith, that is a red flag for me that this person does not want to have a conversation with me about it. And if that's the case, the best thing to do is walk away. Because that is something that somebody who is not willing to have or listen, have that conversation or listen to you, it says. You can only have conversations with people who consent to having them with you. And so recognizing that is going to make sure that you don't put a bitter taste in other people's mouths, especially when they think about atheists, because you don't want to shove that on them no matter how much you want them to change. And I know that that might sound easy to do with strangers, but it is incredibly difficult to do with family. But it's something that you got to do. What you can do in return, though, is have strong boundaries. If you have a family member who wants to have a religious conversation with you, then that's fine. But you are entitled to have your part of the conversation. If someone just wants to have the talk with you so that they can talk at you, you have the right to say, no, if we're talking, then I'm going to be a part of this as well. Right. So the first piece.
Yeah, my father is a preacher, and yeah, he talks at me all the time, and he really does not let me tell him what my views are or why I don't believe. And it's just like, no, you need to believe, and this is why. And then it's just like, and it just comes down to faith, really. And honestly, I'm just getting really tired of it. And I guess I'm just really tired. Okay, Isaiah was a great Christian caller, I will admit. I wish every Christian were like Isaiah, where they would just keep their ideas to themselves. And I think really the problem is that Christians don't keep their ideas to themselves. They're trying to impose their beliefs on us. Well, and I guess that's really where the problem is. And then I guess I'm trying to do the same thing, and I'm trying to deconvert them.
It's well, number one, they're commanded to. The Great Commission is something that they are commanded to do.
Exactly.
But you got to set those boundaries, and you have every right to. It is not selfish of you to say, when I'm having a conversation with you, I want to be treated as an equal. I want equal airtime. And if you expect me to listen to you with an open mind, you need to be listening to me with an open mind. And if you're not willing to do that, then you should not have the expectation that I'm going to be the only one doing it. That is not fair. And setting those boundaries,
I agree.
Setting those boundaries with family, like I said, can be incredibly tough. Speaking from experience, I've had to do it. And I've had
especially whenever they are convinced that I'm wrong and that I'm going to hell if I don't repent.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, what that meant for me in some cases is saying, hey, you're not respecting my boundaries. And because of that, I'm going to be limiting the amount of time I spend with you. And you're going to have less of me in your life until you respect my boundaries. And then that's on them, right? They're going to be making the choice to whether or not to have a relationship with you or to be talking at you. So
Right.
that's I think the most important thing. There's an entire other conversation about people need to have faith in something. And like, while I thought that was the conversation we were going to have, it sounds like your particular instance is one that, yeah, you gotta lay that down. You do not owe your father or anyone else room to just wail on you like that. It's not fair.
Right. No, it's not. It's not fair at all. And honestly, I feel bad because I don't really have a good relationship. Well, to be honest with you, I've never really had a good relationship with my parents, even when I was a believer. But now it's just gotten so much worse, and they hardly ever want to talk to me anymore, and I really don't talk to them that much. And honestly, I want to have a relationship with my parents, but my dad is just way too deep into Christian dogmas. I mean, he preaches as a living.
Yeah.
And he's just absolutely convinced that he's right, I'm wrong, and that if I don't repent, I'm going to go to hell. And I mean, it's like I'm a bad person just because I don't believe in a sky daddy anymore.
So I think all three of us on this call were believers at a point. And I think that you're being incredibly charitable and empathetic to your dad, knowing that he's having this fear of you going to hell, which is motivating it. But but understanding the reason doesn't excuse the action. It just contextualizes it. But I've been totally hoarding the conversation. Drew, did you want to hop?
No, you've done a fantastic job, and I would say that. So, something that I was very encouraged to hear you say was, and I guess I'm just doing the same thing, trying to deconvert them. There are very, very, very good reasons to try to sway someone away from a dogma that makes someone scream at their kid like this, right? Like, we agree on that. But the idea that we need to convert someone to, our brand of atheism or whatever, actually kind of does come from a Christian paradigm. We don't actually know that a person is going to be a better person if they become a non-believer. They might become a better person going to a kind of different kind of belief. If they became a non-believer, maybe that wouldn't be the right path for them. Maybe it wouldn't improve their relationship. The further I have gotten from when I was in your shoes, the more years have gone on, the more I've kind of gotten away from the idea that I could presume to know that another person could parallel my journey out of faith. My journey out of faith was one where I started caring about morality at the systemic level much more. I started caring about having empathy for minorities more, caring about social justice a lot more, caring about people who were not me a lot more. And that's just not the case for everyone. I mean, look at the callers that Eric and V have had, where slurs have been used and air horns and all those kinds of things. And it's not like that they believe or don't believe in God that's causing that. They have other problems.
Right.
But I think that really the ultimate thing here is really something that Eric hit on. It is, you have to figure out the balance of how much conversation to have in order for you to prioritize your mental health. For me, it was really, really, really important that I refined my ideas about different arguments, that I had conversations with people about these things, sometimes that I debated about these things. I am the type of person that likes to dive into things really deeply. I like to learn a lot. I enjoy dissecting different arguments for different things. I'm very verbal, so that's a big part of it. And so for me, that was a part of me becoming healthier when I was going through like a family crisis. And your journey might look like mine in that way. But I will say that, from experience, when you do need to debate, when you do need to argue, be very, very careful about, and not just for other people's sake, but for your own sake, when and where that's happening, the context that that's happening in. You know, it might even be a good idea at times to get a friend who empathizes with where you're at and just ask them if you can have a conversation or a debate, or, you know, ask them to play devil's advocate. At the very least, talk to people where you're more anonymous online, where everybody's wanting to have this conversation rather than having it specifically with your dad. Call in to shows like this and talk about it. I think that this was a really good idea for you to talk about this stuff with people who have been through it.
Right.
I guess my
No,
main
I
advice
agree.
is my main advice
Oh,
is
sorry, I
like
didn't mean to
Eric's.
talk over you.
Yeah, no, you're good. Take care of yourself. And when you have taken care of yourself, then be concerned about what your family believes. If
All
you
right,
if
well,
you get
thank
those
you very
priorities
much. And
out
yeah, I
of order,
mean,
it's going to hurt you. Yeah.
oh yeah. And I do apologize. I really was not meaning to talk over you.
No worries.
But yes, I do appreciate that advice. And I guess part of it also comes from, I remember when I was a Christian, I was homophobic, I was transphobic. I also thought terrible things. I even told people, well, I hope that you have fun in hell if you don't repent of your sins. And I just remember being a very, very toxic Christian because, you know, that's, the Bible says that certain people will go to hell. And I believed it at some point, and I was pretty much an extremist about it. And I guess that's how I view Christianity. And what I once loved, I now hate so much.
Yeah,
And yeah, nowadays I'm a completely different person, and I feel like I'm a much better person. I'm no longer homophobic. I'm not transphobic. I support the LGBTQ plus community greatly, and I just feel that now that I'm free from the chains of religion, I'm a much better person. And I guess I want to help people liberate themselves as well. I want to help liberate others.
I recommend having those individual conversations because here's the thing. Atheist communities still have there are still really, really bad groups of anti-trans, anti-feminist, people. And I think that even if you're not having the God conversation, as much as you are comfortable in adding to, those other conversations are worth having, and it does not necessarily mean you need to deconvert from your religion to not be an asshole in those other places.
Well, thank you very much, Eric. And I do have one more question I do want to ask you, but it's going to be real quick. Have you heard from Thomas Westbrook recently or anything like that? Because he hasn't really uploaded in a while, and his last video was kind of a little concerning. So I'm just trying to make sure that he's all right. Have you heard from him?
I heard from him a couple of weeks ago. Last I heard, he is traveling the world, jumping out of helicopters and stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I think he was in like Singapore recently.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because like his last video that he uploaded about his date with death, I mean, it just seemed like that he was really depressed, and then he just has not uploaded. But hey, if he's traveling the world, that's great. Good for him. Actually, he was the first atheist YouTuber that I really subscribed to back in August. He's the one who helped me deconvert the most. Now, of course, I mean, you've also done that. Matt Dillahunty, Aaron Ra, and so many others, but he was the one that I discovered first and the one that really helped me see that I was subscribing to dogmas for my entire life, which were making me a horrible person.
Yeah. He in real life, he's a total goofball. And
I can see
we'd appreciate that comment of yours a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And I echo the sentiment. I hope he's doing well. I think we all just hope he's doing well.
I do too. Well, I do appreciate y'all taking my call. I know that y'all prioritize theist callers. So I'll go ahead and leave now, but y'all really did make my day with this advice, because honestly, I've been very, very depressed about losing my relationship. Well, I didn't really have much of one left anyway, but honestly, I just have felt so depressed being estranged from my family because of the fact that I just because I don't believe what they believe anymore.
Yeah, I think that I recommend that possibly a good boundary would be just, we don't talk about religion. And if they talk about religion, then you go, okay, you have not respected the boundary that we agreed on before I came, and so I'm going to go. And that's probably going to, prepare your heart to maybe have to do that once or twice or three times. And either they're going to get the message or they're going to find their invites going down to things to do with you, and that's on them. But I know we're going way over. John, thank you for calling.
All right, thank you. And the calls have been great today. No yelling yet. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Wish y'all a good day.
It has been a fantastic day, and I absolutely blame my co-host for bringing the good people in. No, we've got we've got great people in our community too. But it gives me warm fuzzies when my friends are here. Anyway, John, take care.
All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was really sweet. Okay,
Yeah,
so
John, you're in very good company. A lot of people have been in your situation, including myself.
Yeah.
I have definitely been exactly there.
Okay, so Drew, it has been 2 hours. If you got to go, totally understood. I do have 2 other callers that would love to talk. One of them is an atheist on the board of a Methodist church, and the other wants to ask how much an anti-theism should respect believers at all. Would you like to talk to either of them, or should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I can take at least one more. I know that I have an appointment somewhere today, but I just texted my wife to ask if it is an hour from now or 2 hours from now. She'll get back to me, and we'll see whether or not we can take both.
Okay.
Let me see. Let's take the anti-theism one first.
All right, sounds good. Connor in Virginia, you're live with Eric and Drew.
Hello. How are you?
Doing well. I know we don't have as much time to give topics as we probably would hope, but we do want to jump through here. So it says in the description for this call, anti-theism and how much respect we should show to believers and the healthy discourse between differing beliefs. What's up?
Yeah. I grew up in a Protestant church, and I was raised in the Bible Belt, and I also attended a private evangelical institution, and so I have a lot of empathy for theists and just how psychologically inclined people are to believe that kind of stuff, because I've walked way more than a mile in their shoes, and during that time I deconstructed myself probably halfway through my time in college, and I still find myself surrounded by those kind of people, and I still feel myself kind of feeling empathetic towards those kind of people. And I just want to know, because oftentimes when I talk with atheists, people who have never really had the faith, or maybe people who've had very traumatic experiences, mine was mostly intellectual, philosophical in nature. They often say like, oh man, it's like I'm talking to a theist, I'll kind of be bashed because I have a lot more empathy towards a lot of people. I know we've talked about this a lot today.
Yeah.
But I don't know what your thoughts are on, extending that grace towards believers, allowing them to believe what they believe, and kind of how you should brush up against people who, agree with you but don't agree with how you should go about handling discourse.
Got it.
People say the same thing to me. I constantly get comments being like, oh, you're regressing to your former fundamentalist Christianity. And I'm like, why is that? And they're like, because you're being tolerant. And I'm like, no. That's not fundamentalist Christianity. Me having empathy and understanding religious people is informed by how I grew up, just like you. But no, we know that religious fundamentalism is not known for its tolerant attitudes. But yeah, for various reasons, because, like you said, people have not experienced a religious community before or religious belief before. They don't have empathy for it. They can't imagine. I think that the closest analog is probably believing in Santa Claus a lot of the time. And they're like, I can't imagine having a belief that is like my belief in Santa Claus that endures past the age of 7 or something. And that's their closest analog to it. Honestly, I think the answer to that is probably them just learning about the history and psychology and sociology of religion, not the philosophy of religion. That is not going to help. but people learning about how religious history has occurred, how religious psychology works, I think it will increase their empathy. So if you can educate yourself and be a conduit for that, that's very helpful. I would say that the people who probably struggle with maybe not empathy, but moderating themselves are actually people who have had experiences like our last caller. Our last caller had a lot of empathy and had a lot of patience and tolerance, and he was very cool-headed. And honestly, just seeing that, like, I'm very encouraged and kind of amazed, because I know from experience, it's really, really hard to be as calm and as, even-handed and honest and straightforward as our last caller was when you've experienced that and when you're still experiencing it. And, for those people, it has to do, like we said, coming out of that, becoming empathetic and becoming compassionate has a lot more to do with taking care of your own mental health first and foremost, and revisiting the subject later. A lot of the time, lack of empathy comes from lack of education. And so for me, I'm trying to spread empathy through what I do just by making educational videos about Christianity,
Yeah. And then on the other side, when it comes to talking to people who are just dicks about it, the general rule that I have is people deserve respect. Ideas do not. Easy as that. If the first thing somebody says in a conversation is, a pejorative against the human and not the concept or idea, you absolutely have permission to walk away from that, because there's nothing of value there. And, for people who are angry and want to be frustrated and upset, and here's this asshole doing this, they're an asshole because they said and did a thing that was awful, not because they're necessarily, like, when you can separate the person from the idea, you give that person the opportunity to grow. You give that person the opportunity to change their mind and to be a better person in the future. If you label that person as a bad person, they're going to shut off, and you lose those chances to see them become better versions of themselves. So how much respect do they deserve? They deserve, as humans, lots of respect. But if they have terrible ideas, calling out those terrible ideas are exactly where you bring them in. And I think that one other thing, because I know we need to go quickly, but I've talked to a lot of people who haven't had these types of discussions, who equate themselves with their ideas. They say, oh, you're upset about the way I think about this. You're upset about me, right? You think that I'm an asshole because the view that I hold is asshole-ish. That person needs to mature. Yeah. And I see it in atheists and I see it in Christians. There are a lot of atheists who don't know the difference, and so that's why they attack the person and not the idea. And that is just the other side of the exact same coin. So hopefully that context helps. Don't be the guy that attacks ad hominem, that attacks the person. And I don't think it's empathetic necessarily to respect bad ideas. Calling them out doesn't make you a bad person. So somewhere between those.
I think that's a great way of looking at it. Definitely, because I'm very committed to truth and truth above all else, and getting to the why something actually is the way they are. But sometimes people can hold ideas that are not so great, maybe, and just looking into understanding why they have those ideas is usually how I try to look into the situation. So, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, anything else?
I don't think so. Your answer was fantastic as always.
As was yours. Okay. Okay, Connor, have an awesome rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Drew, I know I need to let you go. David has been waiting for over.
Yeah, I have time. I have time for one more. Yeah.
Okay.
If we can do this one, that works great for me.
Yeah, baby.
David in North Carolina has been waiting for an hour and 20 minutes on hold.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Wants to talk about community building. And so I know we don't have a whole lot of time, especially given as much as you have waited to be on this call, David. So if you want to hit us with it, we can try and address it before we got to go.
All right. Beautiful.
Drew, Eric, thank you so much. It's been a great show, informative. That's why you guys have the community you have. But I just want to prime. There was that talk of the higher power and the faith thing, man, from our caller John just a few seconds ago, and that is a thread that got dropped. That is a recovery thread because he had mentioned he was in therapy for alcohol. So I just, as a smart recovery meeting facilitator, I need to chime in now and say there is a secular alternative to recovery, and it's called Smart Recovery. I have my meeting Sunday night at 6.
I love that. So David, can I just like staple your call to his call when I put this out as like their own
Heck
video?
yeah, man. Chop us together, buddy.
That sounds amazing. Oh, so if people want to learn more about Smart Recovery, how can they find out about it?
It's a national nonprofit organization. It's smartrecovery.org. SMART stands for self-management and recovery training. So they remove spirituality from the process of recovery and use REBT and CBT tools to help you build motivation, cope with your urges, right? Manage your thoughts, feelings, and behavior, and then eventually build a new life where you're free of that addictive behavior.
That is incredible. I love this community so much. And for people listening, that's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, not CBD. I know they sound similar. But
so this perfectly.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, man. No, I was saying this perfectly ties into why I'm calling and why I've been invited to join the board of directors of a United Methodist Church. Because it is a recovery-focused church, and our ties in serving the community through recovery services have what brought us together. So yeah, I am a former Southern Baptist minister, and I've been removed from my faith for like over 3 years now.
Wow.
But in that building of community, I found myself in a lot of those religious spaces, and I got sober through AA too. So I'm still actively involved in my original home group. They helped me get sober, so I've stayed plugged in. So now, because of our ties through the recovery community, and I guess my heart to help the community, I've been invited to join the board of directors of the church. But I feel in conflict because it is a church, buddy.
So as far as I'm concerned, you have no reason to feel in conflict. In fact, people like you are the people that I want at the front where people can meet. I think that I had this concept of, a good pastor is somebody who wants to care for their flock. Somebody who wants to get involved and really be there and serve their community. And it is not something that religion has a grasp on. And someone like you, David, is a great example of that. Wanting to be there to support and care for your community transcends so many other things. And I think that it is incredible that you've kept the heart for it. And I deeply admire that. That is incredible. And I would love to hear more of your story, but I know that this isn't the venue for it and we don't have the time, but I absolutely love that. Drew, I can tell you want to jump in.
Yeah. So first of all, in atheist spaces, it's really, really common to, if someone observes that a nearby church closed or a church building is abandoned or, whatever, like church building, church community has dissolved or disintegrated, that's something to inherently celebrate for a lot of people. That's how they feel about it. And I understand if you've been traumatized by religion or you see that the way religion is used as a cudgel against minoritized communities in the US, I get that. I get that sentiment. I don't celebrate that, though. That's not something that I look at and think is an inherent good. What I look at and see as a preferable option is exactly what David is talking about. If we can take church buildings that have the space, that have some of the people that want to minister to the people around them, and they can bring in people of diverse ideas, all focused on a common goal of creating better community, of giving people relief, providing resources for people who are the most disenfranchised. That's exactly what we need. I mean, it is a kind of idea of people are more important than beliefs, which is something that actually the Oasis community, which is kind of like a secular church community, says. And yeah, David, I just want to say thank you for calling in and letting people know that this is a thing. You do you keep going. This is awesome.
Yeah, and give us updates. I want to know how it works out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The last time we talked, Eric told me about how he tweets on the shitter. So I'm glad we could have a full circle here.
I told you about how I tweet on what?
On the shitter, when you're on the can, buddy.
Yeah, thank you for that.
No problem.
Hey,
so it's been over a year. I'm glad to see you back in operation, man.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much, David.
All right, guys. I appreciate the input, and keep on fighting the good fight. We have to build these communities together, no matter what our individual beliefs are, right? But I still feel a bit in conflict in being, an out-and-out atheist who denounces faith decisions of all kinds. Being involved in something that is called a faith community. That's where my internal conflict is.
If you are helping people, then you are putting a good face on this discussion, and I'd love to see that. I would rather more people think about you than about the angry, frothing at the mouth, frustrated, yelling, fedora wearing, stereotypes that are propped up about us. So take care of yourself.
Yeah,
brother.
the outcomes of what we do are so much more important than the specific labels. I mean, and you're doing great. I don't know. To me, it doesn't matter that the other people on the board are Christian or not, or you're atheist or not. The outcome of what you're doing is the measure of the man in this situation. So,
also a good Star Trek episode. David, take care of yourself, brother.
Beautiful. Take care, guys.
Bye. Sorry, I was getting too mushy. Okay, really quickly before we go, Meet Matthew says, how do we as a community get better at reading scientific papers? It seems like many people don't understand sample sizes, methodologies, different types of papers, etc. Some people don't read past the headline and the abstract. V actually put out a really good video on their channel. I'll see if I can link it in the comments about kind of how to do better research. Is there anything you wanted to chime in on that one, or should I just shoot right down the rest of these super chats?
God, the only thing I can say is protect our public schools. That's where it starts.
Damn straight. Goodwill Thinking says, good to have you back. Keep up the good communication with exceptional empathy. Learned a lot from you and like to learn much more. Thank you, Goodwill. Empathy Respect says, hey, Eric, I didn't get the chance to say, but I was trying to say, please give my regards to V. Hope they heal well. I will definitely send you regards to V. Thank you. They also said, thank you for taking my call. Genetically Modified Skeptic is amazing and very handsome. I agree.
Oh, that one was making me smile earlier. I won't lie.
Aw, Terrible Liar says, I found SkepGen through Genetically Modified Skeptic's video with V on Midnight Mass. I also watched Midnight Mass just so I could watch that video. So thank you for both. Watching you two just geek out about that was so much fun. I loved it. Terrible Liar, I'm glad you found the channel. And then Sean Isherwood says, either some squares are round or not every circle is round. Case in point, the taxicab metric in the real plane. That is a fun little rabbit hole to go on that I have personally gone on. I have no idea how that relates, but thank you, Sean.
I think that comment was left when we were talking about the cohabitation bit. So I don't know if it has to do with the our callers' ideas of atheism and cohabitation having a relationship that is direct, or all marriage being this way or that way, or could relate.
Good call. Okay. So as always, if you were frustrated by the ads on this video, totally understood. You can go to patreon.com/skepticgeneration to get an ad-free version of this and the podcast and behind the scenes stuff. Feel free to check it out. Every little bit goes to help the show, especially since we got started. We had a whole bunch of patrons drop, understandably. But yeah, that and a whole bunch of other goodies it's fantastic. Drew, dude, I took you for 2 hours. Over 2 hours, and I told you this was going to be a 90-minute thing. I'm so sorry, and I so appreciate you being on.
Hey, I mean, I appreciate all the help that you have given me with my content, both with helping me out with streams and editing recently. Surprise, surprise. People who enjoyed my last video also enjoyed Eric's work. And No, I love collaborating with you. So this was nothing but a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you so much. I could not ask for a better friend. And I'm so grateful. So take care of yourself, brother. For everybody else, I'm going to be going to Discord after the show. So if you want to talk after the show, you can go to our Skeptic Generation Discord, link in the description. Until next week, I'm glad we had this talk.